Hello everyone, my name is Hanun and this is The Backdrop. For our first video, let's talk about something simple. Let's talk about God. Now, most of the scriptures describe God as an omniscient, independent being. Omniscient in a way that he knows our deepest, darkest thoughts. And omniscient in a way that he knows the past, present, and the future. If that is the case, how does free will make sense? What is the point of free will? Can omniscience and free will exist together? For that, let's look into dimensions. We are familiar with the first three dimensions, x, y, and z. Zeroth dimension is a point in space with no measurable length, and 1D is an infinite straight line extending in both directions, and 2D similarly is an infinite plane extending in two coordinates, and 3D, as we know, is space itself extending in all three coordinates. Now consider an infinite straight line. Let the red segment be a sentient being existing on the line. For the lack of better imagination, let's call him Reddy. Now Reddy is an example for a 1D being existing in a 1D system or world. Reddy can move about in either direction on the line, making it independent in terms of that dimension or line. But the thing is, Reddy has no control over where the line is in the plane or where the plane is in space, making it totally dependent upon the other two dimensions. Bob and Marley here, however, are examples of 2D beings existing in a 2D system or plane. Unlike 1D beings, they have more degrees of freedom and can move anywhere on the plane if they want to. This makes them independent of the two axes the plane is comprised of. But they still do not control where the plane is in space and is therefore still dependent upon the third dimension. But we humans are 3D beings. We do not depend on any of these dimensions. We can move out in space in any coordinates, x, y, or z. Then what are we dependent upon? We are dependent upon the fourth dimension, that is space-time. We cannot move about in time like we move about in space. You have to experience it second by second in an orderly fashion. You cannot reach the next second without completing the present second. But this does not hold true for a fourth dimensional being. A fourth dimensional being would be independent of space-time. It could go from past to present to future, like we go from A to B. But going in the same fashion, a fourth dimensional being would be dependent upon a fifth dimension. A fifth dimensional being would be dependent upon a sixth dimension, and so forth. So for a being to be truly independent, it needs to exist in the last possible dimension. So let's say the God exists. Can he be truly omniscient? Can he know our deepest, darkest thoughts? And can he know the past, present, and the future? Let's look into the first example. Imagine a pair of one-dimensional sentient beings on a straight line. Reddy and his friend. Clearly, Reddy is slightly longer than his friend here. But do they know that is the question. From their perspective, they can only see each other as zero-dimensional points or dots. Only by coming out of the dimension into a higher dimension do we see their actual lengths. Just like standing behind a long train in a straight track. You cannot see the length of the train unless you come out of the track towards the sides or towards the top. But what about our 2D friends Bob and Marley here? How do they see each other? Bob is clearly a circle and Marley a square. But do they know that? From their perspective, 2D beings see each other only as 1D line segments of varying lengths. But we, on the other hand, being in the higher dimension, can see the top view and know exactly what they are. That Bob is a circle and Marley is a square, which they themselves might not know. Humans as of yet are 3D beings. It is impossible for us to comprehend a fourth, fifth, or a higher dimension in which God might exist in. Now we can mathematically picturize a shadow of a 4D figure called a tesseract by joining the vertices of two cubes. But we can't in the real sense even imagine such a figure other than compare it with what it would be like to perceive a fourth dimension in terms of our three dimensions. We can see a lot in each other. We can see appearance, expressions, body language, anything. But are we seeing enough? Can we see each other's stories, their thoughts, their memories? Just like how being in a higher dimension, we can see the length of a 1D being and shape and form of 2D beings, which they themselves cannot see in each other. A being in a higher dimension than 3D could see a lot more than what we ourselves see in each other, perhaps even our thoughts and memories. So, to summarize, if a God exists, if a supreme being in a higher dimension exists, it is possible that he may be able to read your minds, but it is impossible that you will be able to comprehend its shape or form. Any ideology that does so are essentially reducing God into the constraints of our three dimensions. Now, for the second part of omniscience, that a supreme being would know the past, present, and the future. If that is the case, how does it not interfere with free will? For that, we need to understand how humans experience time. Imagine an ant walking on a string. Okay, maybe the ant is not walking as much as it's sliding, but then this is the best I can do. Or imagine an ant moonwalking on a string. Copyright. But you get my point. For the ant to get to the other side, it has to walk the distance. It can only experience the string bit by bit or centimeter by centimeter. It cannot skip to the other end without coming out of the string itself. The viewer, on the other hand, the guy holding the string, is independent of that string or dimension. For him, the string in its entirety exists simultaneously. Humans experience time in a similar way. We can only go through time in an orderly fashion, second by second, minute by minute. We are not independent of the dimension of time. We cannot skip to the next second without first completing the present second, unless we come out of the dimension of time itself into a higher dimension, sort of like an ant walking on a string. But for a being that is independent of time, everything since the Big Bang till the end of the universe have already happened. It is etched into the fabric of space-time. The past, present, and the future exists simultaneously. If you were going to fall off the stairs tomorrow, you have already fallen off the stairs tomorrow. But that does not mean you do not make your own choices. Everything you are experiencing or are going to experience are due to the choices you made or are going to make. But the choices you are going to make have already been made by you in the future. And for the first time, thanks for watching.